All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. We're here, me, Enrico from DSM, Darren, president of DSM, and our good friend Lee McKnight from RSW.
Hey,
Lee is a guy that we love to talk to about agencies and how they can drive new business. But really, a lot of the stuff that Lee puts out there is applicable for kind of any business. It's not just for agencies, even though we love talking shop about that. The stuff that Lee talks about is really just best practice sales and business development for any industry. So we always love when we get the chance to just jump on with Lee, pick his brain a little bit, and talk about some of the things that we're both seeing in the industry. So first of all, Lee, thank you for joining us.
oh man, thanks for having me again. This is awesome. I love talking with you guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it.
So, so we've been emailing with Lee a little bit. Whenever we get these emails, and Darren gets a ton being, the head of the company. People are trying to go after Darren as hard as they can. Darren, tell us about some of these incredible marketing emails you're getting from vendors.
Incredible. They're incredible.
Incredibly stupid emails. No, it's like anybody who's out there listening, all I'm going to tell you is this: do your homework before you send an email. There's nothing worse. And I think we all know this because we're pretty much like, yeah, I would say 97.5% of the world had like good parenting, and now you're like humaning 101 and things like that. There's nothing worse. I actually put something out. So I'm a big fan of Barstool Sports, and Erica Nardini, who's the CEO of Barstool. And she put something out there the other day that I just forwarded, and I can't believe the traction it's getting on LinkedIn. So it was a simple note to the world being like, hey, when you go on an interview, write a thank you note. And oh, by the way, here's a template with the thank you note. So we're like, we're doing you this service. And it was one of those like, hey, thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it. I know you have a busy schedule. If there's anything you need following up, it was the basic principles of like humaning 101. Lee and I joke, and Dan, I try not to like flood your inbox with dumb stuff, but like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
What are you all doing? Because when you write an email, and again, I must get, at this point, I get like 75 to 100 a day that just go into junk.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Enter greetings, agency owner, or greetings, participant A. Like, dude, I got a name. Like, if you even want me to entertain opening this email,
yeah,
like at least know my name. Like, that's like that. That's like the minimum viable product of like starting a human relationship. A lot of times it won't go in, it won't go to the next step because we might not need the service. And, that happens in every business. But like, we must have now a chain of 20 emails where it's like going back and forth. Like, Lee, what stupidness are you getting? Hey, Darren, this is the dumbness I'm getting. What are you getting? So it's just to me, it's common sense stuff. And again, a lot of the relationship that or a lot of the relationships that we have, and I'm sure it's the same on RSW's end, is like that personal relationship. And not always going to work out for you. You're going to win clients, you're going to lose clients. But that personal relationship that's there, it just shows, one, that you actually care about what you're doing and like being professional about your job. And two, it shows that you're going a little bit, like a 0.5% above the minimum. And I think in a world that's now become very electronic, that is even more important than it was when we were all together. So Lee, I don't know about your take. You must get crazy amounts of this stuff, but like, it's become a joke now.
It kind of has, yeah, and I actually do appreciate our back and forths on those. It brings some levity to the day, but I mean, it's not, and in talking about this, we're not trying to, I know you're not, we're not trying to trash anyone, but it is crazy how, and I think some of these folks, maybe whether they're younger salespeople literally in their age or in wherever they are, in their employment, but so much of it, number one, they're not doing their homework, to your point. And that kills you, yeah, because I'll get that all the time. I probably get 4 a day, even from competitors of ours. And not to say that RSWs, because we're 30-person company, but they're like, do you need lead gen help? And it's like, we're a business development company. I let this one guy email me 7 times, and finally I'm like, well, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm actually going to go back and say, will you just jump on our site real quick? And so what I see a lot of is not doing that homework. But then on top of that, get it. I mean, that's what we do is sales. We have our new business directors representing our agency clients, and you're always trying to find a better way in at the top of the funnel, especially. But I feel like all those emails that we get and that we trade back and forth, they're always trying to, besides not doing their homework, always like some kind of angle, but it's not the right angle. Your angle should be that homework. And if you come off that way, then you're going to show them that, to your point, Darren, I like where you put that. Not only do you care enough to say that, hey, there's a reason why I'm reaching out to you. There really is a valid reason. Now, we may not be a fit, right? And Darren, you brought that up, right? It may not work out. That's cool. But I think, trying to find an angle into the cutesy, and that's sometimes you can do a little bit of that. But I think ultimately, to me, that angle is the homework up front. And if you show that going in, then you don't have to worry about, well, how am I going to break in this time? How am I going to, and I love how sometimes they try to trick you. And I mean, we had one the other day that I will say, so Miguel Trejo, who heads up our marketing and operations team, he got an email, and one of Shannon, who is on that team as well. Shannon did not talk to this person, but this dude throws an email out to Miguel. Hey, Shannon recommended that I talk to you. That never happened. So he did his homework. He actually, he got a little tricky and he did some detective work and found out Shannon was on the team. But of course, Miguel's like, no, that's not, come on.
That makes it even worse.
It kind of does. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So that's doing your homework in the wrong way. It's
like when you're going in deceiving somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, and I recommend this not just for agency owners. I mean, we find a lot of value in it, and every time 3 takeaways comes out, when you put something out, there's a lot there's a lot in the videos that you put out about just very simple things. Like we've actually gotten to a point now where we've actually traded the YouTube scene of from Boiler Room, when Giovanni Ribisi's sitting at the table on like a Saturday morning eating like shredded wheat, trying to get the guy to sell him the New York Times over the Post or whatever. Like,
right.
That's where it's gone to. And it's in a world where now you can hide behind a computer screen, to me. And again, before we got on the call, we were just kind of talking about the world opening up again. You never know. It actually makes it harder as well, because if you provide value on the upfront, it might not work out on that first initial interaction, but down the road, if you show that you're doing it in a transparent way and like taking the right steps, you never know where that's going to come off and pay dividends down the road. I mean, we've had clients come back to us. The story I was telling you about this potential client right before we jumped on the call, there was a personal relationship there, but we've been forthright with them the entire time. And there was probably a lag time of about a month and a half, maybe like a month and a half, that we hadn't spoken to them, but we left them saying, look, we're here, we're available. If you need us, we're happy to go back. And it, it got to a point where they were like, all right, we need these guys.
Yeah.
And because of that implicit trust, it made that comeback easier. So
if that trust part is like, if you're not forthright, you can probably never win that point back, right? If it's expertise, you could say, hey, you know what? We've learned a lot. We've had clients from years ago that would say, hey, you know what? DSM has really evolved a lot over the last few years. Cool. Well, I trust Darren, I trust the staff, so let's talk again. But if you don't have the trust after whatever that first engagement is, they don't care how much better you get at what you do. Everything in their eyes is going to be a deception. And so just starting, even if it's not a qualified call to start, at least they trust you, they like you. And if the stars align on those other items, at least they'll feel good and say, hey, let's have that conversation again, because now we're both in a different place. But yeah, if the trust isn't there, it's like, why would I ever go back to you?
But go ahead. No. Think about it in all your relationships, though. Forget about a client agency relationship. Think about it with your spouse, with your, like that trust is like the foundational piece. And like, I don't want to get off on that tangent because you could talk about that for, you know, with your kids need to trust you, your spouse needs to trust you, your family needs to trust you, like all those things. If you're doing those things in that part of your life, I feel like it should come off and it should be almost like the cornerstone piece of your culture. I think that's, you know, I don't know, maybe you guys have a different opinion about that.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, Darren, because I just recently, not this about our content, but that notion of trust, especially at that top of the funnel, and when you start a relationship, I get some people, not even cynical, will say, okay, well, you don't even know each other. Trust is not the right word to use at that point. I would argue, well, actually it is, but it's different than down the line or where you've been working with a client or with anyone. It builds trust over time, right? But the way that you can build trust immediately, number one, is to do that homework. It's a different type of trust. But I will give kudos to both of you. And I would say any agency watching, if you're struggling with content and how to go about it, what I like about you all, I'll pat you both on the back here, but seriously though, is go look at Dan's email or LinkedIn, look at Darren's LinkedIn, because what they do is it's not always about DSM. A lot of time it is. And when they do that, it's cool. But you'll see like Dan who posts up about, I think it's like your men's group and something really cool that has nothing to do necessarily
Right.
with the agency. Darren with your video, when you're doing some of those are amazing. That is another way to build trust. And it's content that may seem like, well, does anyone really care? Well, at first they may not know you, but as you start to do that over time, it shows that you're a human being, you're a person. And that trust is built that way too, because it's like, you know what? I'd like to work with them. That's pretty cool. Because at the same time, you can go, you're also pushing out, of course you are, you're selling yourself directly and indirectly as well in other posts. But I love that blend because again, I think people want to work, when they get some of that insight, and just to say, that's really cool. It has nothing to do with the agency either. I like this, So anyway, I think it's great how you all are handling it.
One of the interesting words that I've gotten, like I just recorded on Tuesday, I recorded episode 9 of Homage, and like, I don't know how long it's going to go or what it's going to be or what it's going to turn into. But the one word that has come out with people that I don't know, like, so the people that know me on LinkedIn, they'll see it. And like, there are obvious connections because that's just the way my world is. It's like connecting people. So they'll be like, wow, that was awesome. Like, it was great to see that person again or whatever. Like the last one I did with my buddy Casey, who I hadn't seen in 20 years.
That's cool.
The one word that has come up over and over again that I think is, to me, is lacking, and it's one thing that like us as an agency and people, is vulnerability. People that don't know me will come up to me when they see one, and they'll be like, the Casey one, majority of the people that liked and shared and saw that video were Casey's friends that were like, this is so cool. We had a girl that we used to work with 25 years ago at ESPN that worked with Casey at ESPN that reached out to both of us on the side that saw the video. This girl, Tiffany, I haven't talked to her in 23 years. And she was like, 2 OGs, like from back in the day, how cool was that video to see you guys like where you're at and to be able to reconnect and just like,
it's awesome.
Casey's been through some stuff in his life. He's got a daughter. He's got divorced. There's a lot of things. And like me, where we were as like young 20-year-old, dudes in big agency land in Manhattan, going to concerts and games and whatever. And she was like, you guys are like, you're so mature. Like, I couldn't even imagine seeing this. But that vulnerability is the word that stands out to me, because if you're willing to put yourself out there in a human way, like to go back to what you were saying about being human, unless somebody's going to be a jerk,
yeah,
there's really no other way to respond other than like, wow, like he's willing to put himself out there. If they're willing to put themselves out there like that, like think of how potentially good it might be to work with somebody like that, and I'll leave that to Dan, because Dan, he's the king of that. Like, he tells people the way it is, he'll say no. That's another thing. Like, he says no to people, and they're, the first time you see it, they're like a little like, ooh, oh, like, this doesn't happen. And then over time, as the no's happen, there's like this, it's like Dan's the glue guy. Like he's Dennis Rodman on a team. Like, not to say you're like Dennis Rodman. Your hair, well, you don't have any hair, at least not pink and whatever. And you don't like, go out with Carmen Electra in like a bride outfit and things like
Who's from Cincinnati, by the way.
Oh, Dennis Rodman all the way. I hated Dennis Rodman. I'm a Knicks fan. But just, he's the glue guy. Like he'll tell people the way it is, and like he'll do the things that people will think, and you'll just see, because a lot of the people that come to us, and I don't know if you have this with a lot of your other clients and things like that, but we're like the fixers. Like we get the second chances of people that are like, oh, I had the worst experience, and they're like, but you guys are different. Like it may not last forever, the relationship, but it's refreshing to be like, wow, I have people like telling me the way it is, and not just like having the feeling like I'm getting taken for a ride and, getting hit for like $1 every month and like nothing's happening.
Yeah. We had a case just last week, and this was somebody we just recently closed, which was great. It's going to be a big rebranding exercise, and they had these sort of buckets of how they're going to approach their services and their products, and they sent us those buckets, and they're like, hey, Enrico, we'd love to get your thoughts. And I was like, honestly, I don't get it. It's like, there's a lot of jargon. The words sound nice, but you're not telling me anything. And it was kind of bold to say, to be honest, because I could just be like, you guys are so on the right track. This looks great. Wow. Yeah, you're doing good, and pat them on the back. But I was like, I don't get it. Granted, I'm not exactly in your industry, but like, I don't get it, And surprisingly, everybody in the fund was like, from the client side, they were like, yeah, no, it is really jargony. It's not exactly clear. It doesn't say what we really do. And, I put myself out there a bit. I'm like, you might not like my feedback, but like, I'm just reading this and I just don't get it. I don't get it. But like, Darren's like that, I'm making myself vulnerable. Like, hey, could we have lost the call over me saying that? We could have, but like, listen, if we're going to go for 6 months, a year, 2 years more, hopefully, I got to start now and tell you, like, I just don't get it. And we need to fix that. And ultimately, I think that's part of what built that trust, where I'm not just going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I really think. Well,
in my mind, that's what they hire you for. That's a good partners overused these days, but right. I mean, otherwise anybody can tell them what they want to hear.
Right.
But do you, I mean, you see agencies from all over North America. Are these guys, when you get these guys, and like, obviously you're trying to help them with their sales process and like figure out those steps to like grow the company, which at the end of the day is like every entrepreneur's goal. Sure. But I love the word. Do you get befuddled by a lot of the people that come to you? Again, we've had this conversation, but I get curious because we get so stuck in the weeds of what we're doing and like trying to push that vibe. Like you come across, it must be crazy for you because you come across like you got to be a chameleon. You got one guy coming from this angle, one guy coming from this angle, one guy, the whole process is messed up. A piece, the mess is messed up. Like, how does the RSW team like take that on? Because there's a lot of work that I know from our end, just for us, there's a lot of work that goes into it and a lot of like evolution. So how does your team do that? Like I don't even know how many clients, you guys must have like myriad clients, but like, how do you do that on a case-by-case basis and stay sane?
Well, no. Well, it's fun. I mean, if we didn't like it, we shouldn't be doing it. But it's interesting. I love the way you kind of teed that off because we handle it the way that Dan just mentioned. And that is, so Mark Schneider's our president, started the company, Chicago guy. He tells it like it is. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. I do too, but it's not quite the same way. I'm a little couched in the southern. I mean, I haven't lived in Nashville for a long time, but point being, what we have gotten very good at over the last, I'm almost 14 years here now, but it's in the conversations before they ever become a client that both Mark and I are very upfront And similar to that example you just gave, we want to talk about their expectations. Here's how we work. Is this going to work for you? And we're going to tell you, again, we see it the same way. You hire us for a reason. And it's because our goal is to help clients close business, period. That's our mutual goal. So we're going to do the things to get us there. And some of it you may not love hearing, quite frankly. And we expect the same feedback in our process. If you feel like, absolutely, it's got to go both ways. But we want to be where we tell our clients to be, same way you all had. It's like, know when to say no and walk away. Sometimes that's what you ought to do. Obviously, it's a lot tougher if you're a young agency. When we were a young company, sometimes you take those clients where you're like, in your gut, you're like, oh, God, we shouldn't be doing this. I just know, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, well, we got to take it, and the quicker you can get to know if that's where you should be, that's where you got to be. I mean, not certainly to every agency out there. I mean, there's just some of those, and it's easy for me to say. I realize that. Sometimes it's like bite the bullet, but it's better to be upfront, right? And I'd rather be friends and walk away and know that, man, we're not the right fit for you, but you're not going to be happy if you sign on.
The initial conversations then for you guys are in the same
Yep.
way. It's like kind of a yin and yang.
Yeah.
It's you and Mark on those initial conversations.
Yeah, we'll do it. I mean, it's either he or I. We are the two that bring in our agency clients. We're not on this call. Occasionally we might be on together, but yeah, it's both of us, and we need to represent. So we're representing the company, right? For all our teams. What we don't want to do is bring on somebody. Hey, here's to one of our new business directors, and we provide a team around each program. That team's going to come in my office and kick me in the, if I bring them somebody who like, what are you doing to us? It's like, that's not fair to them. It's not good for the company. It's not that agency will be happy either. So yeah, we want to get as much of that out up front as we can, to make sure that we're all on the same page.
It's very parallel. Where do they kick you, Lee? In the shins?
This is a family show.
Yeah, it's funny because there's so much buy-in. Like the initial call is me, and usually just me trying to get like the vibe, like budget qualifying and vibe. And then it gets turned over to like Dan and Meredith and like, Zinka and Charlie, like all the folks that are going to actually be doing the work. And I guess that process, and again, we're like about half the size of what you guys are. We're 15 people, but through that whole process, that point that you just said about making sure like Mark and I are representing the entire team. Like, so you're trying to take into account what you think will work, what will vibe, the personalities of the people, not just the process, but the personalities of the people involved. Because we've turned away a few people where it was like, I really don't know. And Dan will say it, like, we'll get on and be like, it'll be a good paying client, but I don't think this is going to be a good deal in like 6 months.
Yeah. And that's tough.
Yeah.
Tough to walk away from,
It is.
But,
do you have a Charlene in your office? Because Charlene makes it. We love you, Char. We love Char. We love you. But it's yeah, those are tough. It's a balance. It very much is.
We had something I had emailed you guys about. We were talking about a bit, and this is one of my most popular LinkedIn posts recently on the topic of trust and setting expectations and all that. Totally different scenario, but I had a guy come and give me a quote to paint my deck, and it was like $1,000 job. It wasn't a huge deal, but the guy came, and I would have paid him like next week. Like, how soon can you start? Because my deck is ugly and I want to be outside. And
sure.
And so he came and he's like, listen, honestly, he's like, I wouldn't do this job for another 6 weeks. And this was, a while back now. But I'm like, 6 weeks? Like, I will literally pay you today. You can start tomorrow. And he's like, no, I wouldn't do it for 6 weeks because it's still too cold out. The temperature is not high enough. Your wood of your deck is still too wet. And I respected the hell out of him for saying that, because I'm like, bro, I would pay you. I will literally write you a check today if you think you can do it tomorrow.
My deck is so ugly.
Start it's so tomorrow. Ugly. And he's like, no, he's like, I really shouldn't do this job now. And I'm like, cool. Well, you know what? Because you said that, and the two other guys that got quotes from, They didn't say anything about that. They just gave me a price and they're like, let me know when to start.
Yeah.
This guy was like, I really shouldn't do the job now. But for that reason, because he told me the hard truth, that's not what I wanted to hear. But I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about and he wants to provide the best possible product. He could have gotten paid tomorrow or today,
Yeah.
but he's willing to put that off to get better service or to give better service later. That to me was huge. And as I was talking to this guy, and it all makes a lot of sense, after he did the job, we were talking about, wow, it's just a crazy economy right now, and people looking for work and whatnot. He said, thank God he's got a good pipeline of jobs coming through, and he's actually really busy. And he said, and I was blown away by this, he's like, I don't advertise at all. He's like, I have no need to advertise. Everything I do, all of my business is referral. And actually, we found him by referral because our neighbor down the street hired him. We had him come over.
Hmm. There you go.
And man, that mindset, if agencies applied that mindset, obviously we need, some advertising. We need to put ourselves out there. But man, like imagine if you were so good and trustworthy and qualified at what you do that your own clients are talking to other people for you. It's like, hey, talk to Darren. Hey, talk to Enrico. You just got to get on the phone with them because the level of service you provide is so good. And I think here's where sometimes it drops off. Me, Darren, Meredith, some others, we're on the new business development side of things. So sometimes we put on our sales hats and we work on that.
Yeah.
But the rest of our agency, they're just not in that part of the process. They're, once we sign, they go to work and they do a great job, but they're not thinking biz dev like me and Darren are, with one side of our brain. So it's the agencies that I think are going to do really well with that are the ones who go to the account managers and the marketing managers and say, hey, we want to provide such good service that they stay a client. Of course, we want to make our clients happy. But it's about getting the mindset into everybody else in the organization that, like, hey, we should be doing so good that client X goes and talks to their friend and talks to their uncle and talks to their neighbor and says, you got to talk to Enrico. You got to talk to Darren. You got to get in touch with them. That level of service, your clients are going to thrive and they're going to love that. But it also just makes the new business development so much easier because they're doing the evangelism for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And when you sent that out, you asked me, I mean, do I see that? And initially I was like, well, yeah, because they don't do good work. But I was like, actually, the more I think about that, it's an excellent point. And you just made it. So I'm like, don't need to extrapolate on too much further. But I will say, and we've written about this before, is that what that has to be, because sometimes not sometimes, all the time, we talk about prospecting with intent. In other words, doing that homework, not just spewing out garbage and generic stuff and hey, agency owner. But instead, it's the same thing with new business, and new business should be an agency-wide culture, to your point. And it doesn't mean everyone touches it the way you do, right? But it does mean agencies have to put intent behind that, almost a plan in that sense too, and go to the other folks and let them know, number one, also that we should have this mentality. And also, I think sometimes it's about recognition too, and saying, you may not feel like what you're doing is also adding, from a new business standpoint, but whether it's organic growth and that's more new business that way, you're important, and I think sometimes those folks feel like they're not recognized or they don't even realize, quite frankly. So I think that intent needs to go towards everything you're saying too, and I 100% agree. And I think those agencies who you better be doing good work, and so inherently maybe those referrals will come in, but I think you've got to take it a little bit further to make sure that they happen, which is part of your point. And I think it's an amazing point. Yeah, I hope agencies watching are taking that to heart.
Doing that, the word that comes to mind, empowerment. You're empowering your staff and you're empowering your clients and prospects to make a sound decision. I think it's made life a whole lot easier for us. So if there is taking one out of the page of our esteemed colleague Lee here with a takeaway, if y'all can take away something from this, empower your people and empower your clients and the people in your sphere of influence to go out and make your life easy. They're doing the job for you. you know, when you're working at agencies like our size or like RSW size, of course my phone rings. Yes, I'm a big Weezer fan. Um, as you, it's far away. I can't even get up right now.
Background.
But as you begin to see that importance and like you're at an agency our size, you realize that you can't cut yourself up into like 50 pieces. You can't be everywhere all the time. And that to me is just how we've evolved, and that evolution and empowering the people. It's almost like as you're becoming a better leader, as you're maturing, like you start handing things off to people. You're like, I don't do this well. Let's find somebody that does. And let's, you know, I don't do this well. So, you know, Charlene, really good with the finances. Like you should be the one. You worked at JP Morgan before, you know, I did. Like you go do that. But you know, I want to, we got to wrap it up, but I want to say thank you. For those that are in our audience that don't know, RSW US is Lee's agency. They are fantastic at what they do. 3 takeaways is the weekly, bi-weekly, how often you bi-weekly, sort of 3 to 5 minute episode that, you know, Lee and the RSW team will put out. Great for agency owners, but as Enrico said earlier in the call, just great for business owners. The content is super valuable. We've been able to garner a lot of information and just like thought processes that we chew on and put into our stuff. So want to say thank you. We have a minute left. So Lee, I'm going to give you the final word. Go off.
Well, thank you for that. I think for small to mid-sized agencies, which is where we play predominantly too, and what you all are, folks watching, I already said it, but you should pay attention to what these guys are doing, what the whole team's doing from a content perspective, especially because it's you'll see kind of how it gets done. And I'm being completely sincere when I say that. The last thing I will point out, okay, with referrals, because you know I got to throw back in there, is it's got to be a mix, right, of referrals. Don't want to depend on those solely, which you all do not, but it's an amazing thing, but because they can be unpredictable, you got to make sure you're keeping in the mix and having some of that outbound, inbound content to help supplement that. But there's nothing better than referrals, right? It's amazing. And that's where most agencies get their new business. But man, there's going to be that time where, when's that next referral coming? And you don't really want to be in that spot. So it's all about balance. Speaking of yin and yang, but no, I love talking to you guys. Thanks for having me. It's been really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.